Welcome to today's webinar, Session 1 of the Training for New Financial Aid Administrators. My name is Ann Voyle, and I will be assisting with the technical details of today's webinar. Steve Thorndle, our Associate Director for Training and Compliance, who will begin our presentation.
Good afternoon. We are so pleased to have you. We know that there may be upwards of 100 financial aid administrators throughout the state who have signed up for this webinar, so we want to use the time wisely. As Ann mentioned, I'm Steve Thorndale, Associate Director, do a lot of work with training, compliance, unit record. Work closely with our next two presenters who will follow me, Carissa Glassburn, who is an Assistant Director, and she's in charge of State Need Grant, College-Bound Scholarship, reporting, awarding, policy, interim reports, all those really fun things that many of you get to deal with. Victor Fernandez, Fiscal Analyst, deals with State Need Grant, CBS payments, the washboard, and a variety of other topics in the office. So we're, I think, ready to go. But before I go to a next slide, I just wanted to show you one aspect of our website where we keep lots of good things. And part of this, we know that we've got people on the webinar that have been on the job anywhere from probably 2 days to 2 years, and a few more senior than that who are looking at this as a refresher course for them or their staffs. So we're hoping that there are some nuggets of information that everybody gains today from this webinar. The experience hopefully will gain a few things, and the new folks will say, wow, that's really interesting or exciting, or this is where I find it, or these are the people to talk to. And that's another aspect of this. We will have all of our contact information at the end, and eventually we'll make the PowerPoints available to you so you have those. But that will show which staff are able to help you with which particular items. Some of your questions may get answered today. Some you may decide that they're ones that you want to talk to us personally, or they're more complicated than we could possibly handle today, and we're, again, delighted to talk to you at any time about that. This view here is what you will get if you go to our website for the Washington Student Achievement Council. And almost everything financial aid administrators are going to be dealing with are under administration. So you pull that down, and most of you will at one time or another be into the portal. We'll have information on portal that will be covered a little more extensively tomorrow, but this is the view of that portal site when you get there. And the other part I want to show you is financial aid resources, where we put almost everything that you could possibly need to manage your programs. Over in this blue boxed area here, we have all of our program manuals, and we usually cover 2 years worth of manuals because of the overlapping nature of the world of financial aid. So we still have, well, we're well into 16-17 obviously, and we're beginning to put aspects of 17-18 as we get those. So let's say you were looking for the current manual for 16-17. You're going to just click that on there, and you'll get an exciting document of 97 pages. So we hope you will all memorize that, but in the event that you cannot memorize that, as none of us have either, there is there's an index in here, and there's also other ways. Staff members, I wanted to show you. Let's say you got into the index table of contents and you just said, I have no idea where to find satisfactory progress. So by hitting Control F, you get this nice little box up there. And again, most of you probably know this. Let's see if I can spell satisfactory. And maybe I didn't spell that. Okay, took me there. This is a little different view of what I get, which usually shows me the number of times that this is up here. This right now is just showing you the next pages. So maybe on your own, as you do this, Control F to get this box, it will show you the number of times. So some of these may be kind of large. There could be 60 different times that Satisfactory appears. But at least you'll get a clue here that you can play with this to try to find different parts of the manual here. So that's as much as I want to show you on the manual, other than it's a terrific resource. Staff spend a lot of time on this each year, and we're working diligently on the 17-18 manual. We expect to have out, at least by the time the legislature concludes its process this year or shortly thereafter. The biggest missing thing right now is we don't know award values for the 17-18 year, because that will be dictated by decisions of the legislature over the course of the next few weeks or months. So program manuals are over here. Hopefully you're all subscribed to the SFA Partner. This is a quarterly document that we put out. We carry here on the website the most current issue here, and you can scroll down, look at any of these topics. You could also, at any time, if somebody said, I think somebody put out a great article last July of 2015, you can go into the archives and scroll through here until you find different issues here of whatever the year was. If I said 2015, I meant 2016. We had a July issue on that. So become very familiar with this. If you have questions on this at all, let us know. So we're going to now move into the more formal presentation. And our agenda, you have likely seen this. We're going to try to cover everything listed under day 1 today, but if we don't, it will roll forward to day 2, any items we might miss today. But so we've got the state attainment goals, state program administration, and then drill a little deeper into, after covering some common areas, into our state need grant and college-bound scholarship and passport to college program. For the state attainment goals and other administration, this is also on our website here, which shows you state aid and kind of the big numbers. And we have one of the largest state grant programs in the nation, our Washington State Need Grant Program, $287 million. It's assisted this past year 69,000 students. That's the really good news. The not so good news that you'll see later, and you may know if you've been in aid administration for a while, that there's still a substantial number of students that are not served the state need grant. They're called unserved, and we'll talk more about that later. College-bound scholarship program, about 16,000 students are being served for this year for $22 million. State work study employment, $12.5 million, 4,500 students, and passport to college, about 4,500 foster youth. And then quite a variety of other programs that we manage here. Some of them are workforce programs and other programs like the American Indian Endowed Scholarship Program. So one thing that all of these programs have in common, and all of the work that we do at the Student Achievement Council, is to really support the state's attainment goals. And what we mean by this is that the Student Achievement Council members, then followed by the legislature, officially proposed and adopted these goals that would happen in the state of Washington. And so they're looking forward by 2023 that of all the adults in Washington state, 100% would have a high school diploma or the equivalent in that year. and at least 70% will have a post-secondary credential. Could be 2-year, could be 4-year, could be apprenticeship program, other short program, but some kind of a credential or degree that will help them in the marketplace. Now, the 100% will have a high school diploma equivalent. It's hard to get 100% of anything, but it's one of those aspirational goals that we want every student to be part of this succeeding economy that we have and be good citizens and help us grow and help their families. So it would do no good to say we want 99% of students. We really want 100%. Will we ever hit 100%? Who knows? But we're going to work real hard towards it. We appreciate all your help in doing that too. So these are goals that as we manage programs and go to the legislature, we constantly have our advocates being proponents of these goals and saying we need additional resources to be able to help meet those goals. So where are we on those? Well, when this was all established in 2013, the baseline was about 89% had high school degrees or the equivalent. It was measured 2 years later, and it climbed the right direction, 90%. Still quite a ways to go, but this is it takes a village, it takes a state, it takes a country to be able to do this. I was very pleasantly aware. I get one of the papers I get is Tacoma paper, and they were just showing how all the schools in Pierce County had been advancing the highest level again this year that are coming out. So we're going to see these levels go up and get closer and closer. For the post-secondary degrees, the baseline was 50%, and when it was measured in 15, it was 51%. The goal is to measure this every 2 years, so they should be one out later, probably very late in the 2017 year that will give the 2017 update. That's a long ways to go from 50 to 70%, but again, we want our students to participate in the Washington economy and do well and have living wages for themselves and their families. So 2023 is not that far off, so if these goals are not quite achieved, my guess is that the council would say, guess what, we're going to keep moving towards this, it's going to take a little longer to get there. So they're great aspirational goals and ones that everybody can work towards. So we're digging a little deeper now into the world of financial aid administration, and this slide here talks about the need for proactive administration of the program. So there are only so many things that we can do, and there are many things that you must do as a aid administrator. And you know, I've worked in 3 colleges, one in Washington over the years, and I know how challenging and tough, but good the work is to be able to be a financial aid administrator. So really, really glad to be working with you. We really highlighted here, it's your responsibility for following the rules and the procedures in the program manuals. And I've shown you where they're at. If you're at all like me, you'll probably print one of those off. Some of you will. And highlight pages and constantly be looking at them. You know, even though I've been in financial aid a long time and here at the council for 4 years, there are things that seem new to me when I look at the manual from time to time. So it's a constant looking over and checking things and asking questions. We will have additional training sessions during the spring. We have traditionally a series of spring workshops throughout the state of Washington. This year, it'll probably be late April. There'll be an official email in the weeks to come where we'll have in 4 regions, probably one around Olympia, one North Seattle, one Spokane area, and one Yakima area this year. So it'll be easy for drive-in events for folks throughout the state. We'll have our staff there to be able to present the highlights. Becky Thompson, our director, will be one of the presenters, probably along with Carissa Glassburn and myself. Becky will give the legislative updates and the latest happenings and so forth. So we hope that you and others will be out there. We typically are involved in WASFA training meetings, both the summer and the fall. So watch for information on our programs there if you're interested. We are readily available to respond to phone calls or email inquiries. And so program manuals, keep that at the forefront. And then the last is just to let you know that there could be repayments if things are not handled properly. So we don't like that to happen. You don't like that to happen. So working together, we should be able to be very positive in terms of our proactive administration of state aid programs. So this is just kind of a profile of our three major scholarship and grant programs. I'm not going to read all these items to you here, but they'll be on the PowerPoint when you get a copy of that later. But it shows you, and this is on the 15-16 year, average awards, a variety of things, how many went to four-year institutions, how many went to two-year institutions. So a couple of unique things. If you said, what's unique, for example, about the college-bound scholarship in terms of this program compared to others? Well, you see that a higher percent attend four-year institutions than either state aid grant or passport to college. You'll see that very high percent, 100%, currently are under age 23, and that's, the other programs are unlike that, and that's really kind of by program design, by the legislature wanting to help students go to college, go to post-secondary education right after high school, get their training, and they limited the number of years that students can use it. So we're never going to see that go very high. It may once in a while be somebody above 24 when the program matures, but it's going to be mostly young people. You're going to see, because of that, because they're coming out of high school more rapidly than the other programs, you're going to find that most are dependent students, and like 92% of them are dependent students. So what's unique, for example, a state need grant? Well, some of the opposites. You have a lot more independent students. That program serves students at any age, and there are a lot of returning adults or returning to school either in their career or to get workforce training. So that's a good indicator there. You're going to have probably more that are going to two-year institutions and under the college-bound scholarship program, so forth. The Passport to College program, again, is one is for foster youth, and they are, by definition, independent students. 100% are independent. They're typically younger as well than the state aid grant recipients. But and as far as students of color, college-bound scholarship is the highest percent. You see 63% are students of color. I think a lot of that is the really deep work being done in high schools all throughout the state to encourage every student to prepare him or herself for post-secondary education and to go to college. And the populations are very heavy with a variety of students of colors. And so that's a very positive indicator that we're heading in the right direction to get a 100% high school graduation rate and higher post-secondary participation rates. So we're now going to move into how to apply for state aid. So Carissa is going to handle a few slides now. Carissa,
all right, thanks, Steve. Well, some of you might be wondering, then how do students apply for all of these wonderful programs that Steve is describing? There's two applications available to students. There's the FAFSA, which is the federal application for student aid, and then there's the WASFA, the Washington application for state financial aid. That application became available in 2014. It's developed between WSAC and with Need Access, but we have a new servicer this year, Region Education. So there's a rule of one. Students should submit either the FAFSA or the WASFA, but they should not submit both. It can cause some issues when you're importing records into your systems. If they already have one or the other in the system, it can cause some issues. So the FAFSA, you may have heard of it. I hope you have if you're administering financial aid. This application is for U.S. residents and permanent non-residents. All colleges use this for federal, state, institutional need-based awarding, and maybe even for some internal scholarships. Students do need to complete a new FAFSA each year, and the FAFSA is now available on October 1 of each year for the next academic year, the reverse of prior year. So in October 1 of this year, it'll be for the 18-19 year. Is that correct? The WASFA, it has the same timing as the FAFSA. Students still need to complete one every year. It's available beginning October 1. Okay. So access to the WASFA. Direct your students to readysetgrad.org. You can see the link there, readysetgrad.org/WASFA. We did change vendors, as I mentioned earlier. As of October 1, the WASFA application vendor is Regent Education. So this did replace our old vendor, the Access Group. We did have another change with that. Need Access used to handle all of the customer service for the WASFA application, but with the change in servicers, WASAC is now handling those customer inquiries. So you can direct applicants if you receive questions or you have questions yourself and you're trying to assist a student. You can contact WASAC directly at either wasfac@wasfac.wa.gov. You can see the email address there on the screen. Or you can dial our toll-free line, which is listed there, and select option number 2. That will take you directly to a WASAC staff member. To access your WASFA applicants, you will go into the portal, and Victor will show you details tomorrow on how to get a login and access the portal. But there's a screen there where you can access your WASFA applicant information. You will have to have permissions for this page, so if you do not have those permissions and you need them, you can either talk to the institutional administrator at your college, or you can email us at the WASFA email address listed on the prior slide. You can download them in either ICER or CSV download. And there was one other thing I was going to mention. Oh, it's available the day, applications are available the day after the student submits to WASFA. So they go onto the Regent site, they submit their application, and once they have signed it, and if they're a dependent student, their parent has signed it electronically, that information is transmitted to us overnight and will appear on the screen the next day.
All right, thank you. So we're going to move now into eligibility requirements that are common across programs, and then later we'll dig into unique ones to specific programs. So some of the common ones are that everybody must be a Washington resident. We have a couple slides on that a little bit later because it isn't as simple as it sounds, but from a high level, you must be a Washington resident for our state programs. All of these programs, you must be in eligible undergraduate programs that either lead to a bachelor's, an associate's, or an undergraduate professional degree, or some other vocational certificate or degree. There are currently 66 eligible institutions that students may use their funding at, and this gives a listing for the schools. Probably each of you are more concerned with your own school, and I'm sure you're on that list, but good choices for students all throughout the state. Other things that are common in the program that there are some cannots, and one of them is you cannot be working on a second or additional bachelor's degree, even if it doesn't happen often. Somebody could have a foreign bachelor's degree, and you cannot come to the U.S. and work on a U.S. bachelor's degree with these programs. You can't pursue a degree in theology. You can't be currently owing any repayments to any state or federal aid programs. The student can't. The student, while they're receiving aid, cannot exceed 125% of the established program length. So if a program length was, 120 hours, 120 semester hours, whatever the other 20%, I guess it'd be 140. You can't exceed roughly 140 credits and still get aid. But if somebody had remedial coursework necessary to prepare for a degree or certificate, that remedial work is not included in that program length. Student cannot pursue a second associate's degree and receive state need grant, for example, unless 5 years have passed since the first associate's degree was earned, if they had received more than 3/4 or 2 semesters of state need grant funding. So this doesn't happen that often, but there are cases where it does, where a student wants to try to get a second associate's degree. So there'll be an archive file that Krista will show you later. You must maintain satisfactory academic progress in all cases to continue to get aid, and again we'll cover that in a little deeper dive in a few minutes. So the returning to the Washington residency criteria, so students who are U.S. citizens or eligible non-citizens as determined by the U.S. Department of Education, and students who qualify with the DACA Deferred Action for Childhood Arrival may qualify for state residency when they are either a financially independent student who has established domicile in Washington, or a dependent student whose parents or legal guardians have established domicile in Washington. So there are those situations there. There's a lot more detail on this. If you want to look deeper, we've got a couple of links here that you can go to later when you get the PowerPoint. The residency's definitions vary a little bit by program. State need grant passport, it shows you the RCW language here as to what that means. And then the college bound is a slightly more restrictive policy on this. So I think in general that A through E means that students who are residents under most definitions, and also those who might be known as who would meet the 1079 requirements could be eligible for state need grant, but not for the college bound scholarship. I've got a slide that will go deeper in the 1079 requirements in a minute. Sometimes the questions get a little detailed, and particularly if you're a public college or university, there should be a residency officer who can help you determine whether or not the student is really a resident for state purposes. At private institutions, that expertise usually has to be handled by the financial aid office, and so there's probably somebody on your staff at a private college university who becomes more expert at that. Or if you have additional questions, you need some help, you can contact us here. We've got a residency expert here at the Student Achievement Council as well. State financial aid for dreamers, and dreamers are really, I'm sure you've heard that a lot in the last few years in terms of national news and state news, in terms of kind of a terminology for students who, most of them were brought here as youths from other countries, oftentimes Mexico, other South American, Central American countries, but it doesn't have to be those countries. But they, the parents may have moved up here, the kids were brought, and they may have been here for years and years and years, and graduating from schools, and are really doing a good job. And but they are still living in the country without official immigration status, and so oftentimes they're called undocumented students, but also in this other positiveness referred to as dreamers, and there's been a lot of people trying to expand opportunities for dreamers to be able to get state aid and hopefully at some point federal aid, but we're dealing with state aid today. So the Dreamers, though, could fall under, and here under kind of three different categories. One who meet residency requirements under this 1079, which will be next slide. Others who are eligible under DACA, and there could be other Dreamers who don't meet residency requirements. Maybe they were a Dreamer in Oregon and just have moved up here recently, and they don't meet the state requirements for state residency, so they would not be eligible for state aid until and if they became a state resident. But so the one on the left here, which is the 1079 language. The 1079 was a House bill that came out. It was nearly 10 years ago, I think it was, that this occurred, where the state allowed students meeting these conditions to get in-state resident tuition. Prior to that, technically they were not eligible for in-state tuition.
Question.
All right. Question.
The question is, what advice should we give Dreamers and WASFA eligible students if they fear to apply for financial aid due to the current political climate? And then there's a second one. It says, I have not been in financial aid very long, but I am aware that an international student at my school is eligible for WASFA funding. Is this common? Is this the intention of the program? So there's two questions.
The two questions.
Sub-questions.
Well, and this is not official policy that I can tell you on this. As far as the fear factor, I think that's a valid situation for a number of students feeling that. Did you want to respond to that? Chris can actually take that.
As far as the first question goes, we do have a privacy statement that we've added to the WASFA as well as the readysetgrad.org/WASFA website, which states that the state of Washington and financial aid administrators are only allowed to use the information submitted on the application to determine eligibility for financial aid programs. We also added a statement onto the portal website, so that information will not be shared with anybody but the colleges. And we also have an agreement with, of course, the application host not to share that information as well. So hopefully that will help ease the fears of students that may be afraid to submit their information, that it truly will only be used to determine eligibility for financial aid programs and shared with organizations that mainly the colleges, student level data to the colleges that they'll use to determine eligibility.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a response on the international student?
I don't. I think we would probably need more information on that particular student. So you can feel free to contact myself. This is Carissa, or you can send an email to the WASFA inbox or the SNG inbox, and we could take a closer look at that particular student.
Thank you. Certainly the intent, I think the questioner was right. The intent is not to provide state financial aid to students that are normally considered international students, but it might be something very unique to that particular student that
Correct.
would require a review by our staff on that. So thanks for the good questions. This, again, the 1079 requirements are here, and so there are basically three areas that students have to satisfy, and that is that they have completed their full senior year in the state of Washington, and they've obtained a diploma or GED here in Washington. They've lived in Washington State for at least 3 years prior to and continuously since earning their high school degree, and they are willing to sign a written affidavit that they wish to become a permanent resident of the United States when eligible. So there are many, many thousands of students each year who are willing to attest to this and are eligible as 1079 students. So those students could receive, if they're eligible for all other things, for the Washington State Need Grant Program.
We have one other question. It says, according to the Attorney General, student information on the WASFA is protected under FERPA. but only so far as FERPA extends to the student, meaning the student must be fully admitted, enrolled, and commence attendance to be fully protected under FERPA. So a student that sends the WASFA to multiple institutions may only be fully protected under the school they actually attend. And that is from Corinne Soltis.
I guess we'll just have to take that one back and kind of ponder that along with Becky Thompson, our director, and Rochelle Sharp, our deputy director, in terms of that. Thanks for that information, and that's worth for us to check that out more. The DACA students, the box on the right, must meet the same requirements as a U.S. citizen, typically if a family living in the state for 1 year prior to college. They must have the DACA documentation and the eligibility for a college-bound scholarship is still restricted to those who successfully applied in the 7th or 8th grade. I guess that means that somebody gets a DACA in 11th or 12th grade. If they had not signed up for college bound earlier, they still can't get to college bound because they would have missed that deadline. So that previous question that came up, just another thought here, since we will be having our state workshops coming up in the spring that will be attended to by both new and experienced financial aid folks. That'd be a good time for us to have an update on that one. So, all right. So, if there is any conflicting information, we require institutions to resolve this information between whatever offices that might have the conflicting information, financial aid, admissions, registration office. We periodically compare residency-related data reported on the FAFSA or WASFA, such as mailing addresses, states of legal residence, etc., and request that institutions either confirm eligibility or resolve conflicting information. And DREAMers should be treated the same as other state need grant applicants when resolving conflicting information and you're performing other verification activities. This slide here, and there's a very similar one in the current manual, but it doesn't have the passport version on this, but it looks at where there might be slight differences between programs, and I'm going to go through quickly in some of those, like under the meet a high school graduation requirements. State need grant passport will allow a GED or a high school graduation, and it doesn't have to be a Washington high school either, but CBS is very specific. They must graduate from a Washington high school, and it can't be a GED degree, so it's much more specific. CBS also has they cannot have any felony convictions by the time they graduate from high school. That doesn't happen very often, but it is a matching process that the legislature requires that we check on that. Second one about meeting college enrollment deadlines. State need grant is very broad on that. It wants to help just about anybody at any time in their career, as long as they meet other criteria. For the other programs, passport is directed at younger students. They must enroll and start the passport payments by age 22. And actually the college-bound scholarship program is even more specific, that they must start college within 1 year of high school graduation. So the example of that would be if they graduated in June of 2015, they would have to start college actually by the fall term of 2016. So they get a little over 12 months, but it's really so they have that final fall term after the high school graduation to do that. Both of them require the same applications, FAFSA or WASFA. Income criteria, we'll dig into a concept called median family income in a moment, but you'll see that state need grant allows a little higher eligibility, 70% median family income. College bound, 65% or less. Passport does not look at median family income, but it looks at need. Everybody must demonstrate need. The aid must fit in the package one way or another. Self-help requirements are a little different. We'll cover that in other slides. And the enrollment status for payments, there are a lot of opportunities. It looks like in most cases you could be either a quarter, a half, or 3/4 time student or full-time student. Passport may be the only one that requires a little different. You have to be at least a half-time student for passport. Typically 6 credits at a credit school. And the maximum term usage, how many terms can you get? And these are based upon full-time, so it mentions here is prorated for, it would be prorated for part-time. So state need grant allows up to 15 quarters of 10 semesters, which is basically kind of 5 full academic years you could receive that. State college-bound scholarship is more restrictive. It just allows 4 years, the equivalent of that, 12 quarters or 8 semesters. And then the last one here on the eligibility window to receive the payment. It's not applicable for state need grant. Again, a very open program. Passport, you have to conclude this by the time you're age 27. And the college-bound scholarship program has a 5-year usage window from the high school graduation year. And so that's keeps students young in that program, but it's really encouraging them to get out and get their degree. Now, there could be cases where a student runs out of eligibility for a college-bound scholarship, and then but they still have another year, for example, for a state need grant because those two overlap. And I think we'll see some examples of that a bit later. All right, so for income purposes, dependent students, we're looking at the parents' adjusted gross income and untaxable income, non-taxable income. And we don't include those students' income. For independent students, the students' adjusted gross and the student's non-taxable and income from any other adult, including the student's family, would be in there.
I have a comment, Steve. I'm thinking maybe it might be the prior slide. It says, to clarify, the term is prorated, meaning if the student uses funds in the term, they are not counted one whole term, but the corresponding percent based on enrollment, 25%, 50%, etc. That is from Joy Scory.
All right, thank you, Joy. So yes, if you're enrolled as a half-time student, it would count as a 50% of a quarter or a semester. So thank you, Joy.
If I could just add to that, too, we would, when we talk to college-bound students, we encourage them to try to go full-time because their window expires after 5 years. So while they do get the 12 quarters of college-bound, if they only go half-time each quarter, they're not going to get all of their quarters before their window runs out. So just something to keep in mind when you're working with students, that those two, the number of quarters of eligibility and the 5-year time frame, they work together, but they are separate.
Thank you. So it's this slide on the income again. If there is not an adjusted gross income present, maybe they're a non-tax filer, you use the sum of all taxable and non-taxable income for determining the income for purposes.
I do have another question. What if the student has a dependent status, has filed for taxes, and an AGI is provided on the student's ISER? Do we not combine both parents and student's income?
So this is a dependent student?
Yes.
We only use the parent income level for determination of this. Now when I talk about for program eligibility, because we're going to be determining a median family income figure. The income may still be included by the financial aid and determination of need, your own need, in terms of, but this is more particular for how we determine income for median family income level. So it becomes a fine line there. There are some other things to consider in terms of making an adjustment when you're trying to determine this level, and probably should have labeled that for median family income on that other slide. We can fix that up. But Title 4A can be subtracted. If there was child support income for less than half-time students, that can be excluded. And professional judgment decisions that you make at your institution may be used to adjust the situation as well. So this is the concept that I began to talk about, median family income, which kind of drives part of the eligibility for state need grant and college-bound scholarship. An important part of it. It drives who's eligible to get it, and then for state need grant, what level amounts that they actually get. So, in fact, I'm going to flip very quickly to this chart just to show it, and then we'll go back to this slide. But the chart here is, we publish a new chart each year. This is the current 16-17 chart. 17-18 chart is available on our website. So it looks at, as you see here, family size, and then various levels of income. So if a family of 4, for example, had an income of $60,000, they would be off the chart. They would be, that would mean their median family income was higher than 70%, would not be eligible for a state need grant for that particular year. But a family of 8 with $70,000 income would actually qualify under the 60% MFI range there. So just a second here. So let me cover this and I'll get back to that. So increase, so on that particular chart though, you increase the family size by 1 for every additional family member besides the students and parents who will be in college. So, family with 4 people that have 2 children in college would show up as a family of 5 for determination where they fall in that level there. Eligible CPS scholars may qualify if their family's income is within 65% of the state's median family income, state need grant within 70%, and there's an exception in the state need grant manual that's used rarely, but it is there, that if there's a particular year somebody's eligible for state need grant and they fall off the chart the next year, they're not eligible, but their income went up by 3% or less, they could still be eligible. So that would only happen if somebody was right on the margin in the 1 year, and then so it allows for a little protection there that they don't quite fall off the cliff if you want them to. You have to document your file on that. Mentioned passport to college does not use MFI per se, but uses need. And the chart shows, this is the chart we talked about here. So hopefully this will become more and more clear as we get into more examples of packaging as well, because it is complicated. There's no doubt of that. Satisfactory academic progress. So applicable to all state aid programs, including state need grant, college bound, etc. And institutions must review state aid recipients' performance at the end of each term and determine if they are maintaining satisfactory academic progress. This differs from the review process from the federal financial aid. Question?
Yes, we have a question. It actually is back on the MFI chart.
Okay.
It says, can you give another example or two how to read the median family income chart, especially how to match the income with the percentage?
Yes, I can. All right. So I will pick a number and say, I mean, you have to determine the family size. So let's say you determine the family size. You have a family size of 6. And somebody's income is $78,000. That would fall in the chart way to the right, where it's the 78,500. So you take that as you go, 78,500 or less. So the 78,000 will fall there. If somebody's income is 73,000, they're going to be in the next category. So they're going to fall in one called the 65% range. If somebody's income in that family of 6 was $40,000, they're going to fall under 56,000. So they will be in the what we call the 50% MFI range. So the 50% really mathematically is 0 to 50. So if you thought of each of those go 0 to 50, you know, above 50 to 55, etc. So I hope that helps on that. So the SAP, there are, again, you measure once a term before you can make a disbursement of the next term. There's both qualitative and quantitative standards. Now, the quantitative standard for a full-time student means that they must, for a school of credit hours, complete at least 12 credits per term. And for a qualitative standard, every institution must have their own policies on this and have some kind of standard, and many will have one. For example, the student must have at least a 2.0 GPA to meet the qualitative standard. This can be, in this case, it could be the same standard used to comply with federal satisfactory progress, if you wish. So this shows at the end of each term, really, what is the numerator and denominator of the equation here is really what you have to do each term. And so you're trying to figure out the number of credits successfully completed at the end of the term. So let's say a student started out with 15 credits. They completed 7. So the numerator is going to be 7. But the denominator is going to be 12. Because 12 would be the minimum number of credits that it takes to give the student a full-time disbursement. So in that case, if they completed 7, you'll find out that they go on a financial aid warning, which is next slide. But so this shows you on the prorations, if you're going quarter time, half time, 3/4 time, or full time, what are the minimum numbers that are going to be in that denominator? So in a way, a student who starts out as who enrolls for 12 credits as a full-time student, they must complete all 12 credits to be considered satisfactory progress, okay for that term. But if they took 18 credits and they completed 12, they're still okay because they completed 12 divided by the minimum number of 12. So it's a unique thing to this particular program in terms of the way the calculation works on that. So now what happens? You've got to with great care be looking at every student every term and see whether or not they're okay. If they're okay, they're that top one, maintaining SAP. They completed at least the minimum number of credits for that term. Then there is a warning status where they've completed 50% or more of the credits that was calculated. So, and they can continue the disbursements for that term. So again, if you went back for a moment, if you could remember that other example I gave you, so let's say a student registered for 15 credits, they completed 6, changed it a little bit, they completed 6, they would go in a warning status because in this case, the 15 credits is what they took, but the minimum number was 12. So the 6 divided by 12, they completed 6 out of 12. They're exactly at 50%, so they go in a warning status.
I have a couple of questions.
All right. Well, I'm going to get to those. Let me do the denied, and then we'll go to the questions on that. Okay. So denied status, is if they complete less than 50% of the credits for which the aid was calculated. So if they were full-time at 12 and they completed 3, they go into denied status. No further disbursements may be made, and so forth. There are some professional judgment decisions that can be made. Ann, you have questions?
Yeah, there are a couple. The first one is for SAP, can a school make their criteria for continued eligibility harder than the state? For example, if we wanted to use the actual number of credits attempted as 18 rather than normalizing to 12, can we do that since it's harder?
We have to get back. I don't have my manual in front of me.
Okay.
So we'll need to get back to everybody on that
Okay.
particular one.
The second one is, what if a student did not successfully meet SAP requirements one quarter, then they take 2 quarters off from school and come back again and do not meet SAP requirements? Are they now denied aid? How long does the SAP progress follow the student? There's another question.
All right, well, part of this, maybe the center of this, where the college has to have a written policy on number of terms that may be applied before a student goes into denied status. That may not have been that case. But if a student did go in denied status, a college also has to have a policy on what they have to do to remedy the situation and come back later. So we've seen policies at schools will say if a student pays successfully for another term and earns all the credits the other term, then they go back into satisfactory academic progress. Okay on that. So there are a lot of different variations of that, and you'll get a chance when you submit your policies. Jeff Powell will be sending something out in a month or so to colleges that has you list your SAP policies, including things like how long a student would have to stay away before they can come back and get aid. So I'm not sure I can answer every one of those variations like that.
The last question I have here is there a maximum number of times a school can allow a student to go on warning or suspension, or to be appealed through probation?
Our manual is silent on that currently on the number of terms it could be on warning, but it does say something, and we're talking about that as staff, that it can't be an unlimited number of terms. So I think the practice has been that most people say 1 or 2 terms in a situation like that. But these are good questions. We're going to take these and kick these around some more. Clock hour schools, it's a little different for those schools. Basically, payments are oftentimes made initially, and then a student must complete successfully 300 clock hours to advance to the next payment period. And other conditions of policy, the student may be denied further disbursements if they fail other conditions of the institution's approved SAP policy. So the one question where somebody asked could they be stiffer than the state policy, I think there are cases where that has happened, where they've recommended that in their renewal process, but we're still going to look that one over. Reinstatement, here it mentions you must state which conditions for a denied status must meet before they're reinstated. And professional judgment, on a case-by-case basis, you may reinstate the SAP standing in response to the student's extenuating circumstances. So they could go into denial status, they could be reviewed by your committee, you could give them another chance, but you got to document that all, keep it in writing, and inform the student on that. The maximum number of terms is student may receive aid. We've mentioned this before. For these are based on full-time status, 15 quarters, state need grant, 10 semesters, etc. There is this calculation that's called the quarters of eligibility remaining that WSAC keeps track of that will show the number of QERs that have been used by each student, and I believe it shows the number that are, actually this shows the number that are remaining that they could yet use. Payments for less than full-time awards are prorated. We've talked about that before. State need grant, the QER for students appears in the archive file that Carissa will talk about. And for CBS students, the QER appears in the Cruncher file. It's located in the portal that we'll also talk about. The conditions of award statement must be presented annually to all state grant and scholarship recipients. How you present it to students is up to you. It could be electronically. I've seen it on the back of award letters, but there's no requirement as to how you do it, just that you do it. We are going to be asking for copies of your conditions this spring, and just a short statement as to how you assure that each student gets a copy of this each year. This Opportunity Pathways, in the center of this is a important link there we want students to be able to see. Pardon me, links them to our website and gives them lots of information on financial aid counseling. This disbursement of state aid, the directive only applies to students at private colleges, universities, or institutions, and this must be done one time by a student. They have to have a choice as to whether or not they wish to have their funds apply directly to their account, or if they wish to get a check to do their own payments, so that school cannot require a student to do one way or the other. Ann?
We have a quick question. It says, do I have to present this information directly to the student, or can I say they have to agree to it to receive the funding and then show the link where the conditions are given? I think it's actually questions on the conditions of award.
Well, this has to be presented before you actually make a disbursement to the student. It doesn't say how soon before that, but it has to be presented then before the first disbursement. I think, if you ask me, I think it's probably best to get it out about the time the award goes out to the student for that year, so they have time to look at this over well before the disbursement, in case they see something that would cause them to want to contact you to say that they're not eligible. But it does have to be, the document must be presented to them. It can't simply be go to this website. So, okay. So either present it through paper or electronic means. All right, we are turning back to Carissa for the State Need Grant Program.
Okay, thanks, Steve. State Need Grant Program. It is our longest running program. It was established in 1969 with the intent to offset tuition and fees for low-income students. It's also our largest financial aid program. Last year, we spent $305 million, the 15-16 year, with to nearly 69,000 recipients. As Steve mentioned earlier, there was still 24,000 that were not awarded because there was not enough funds to serve them. So enrollments do continue to outpace the available funding. The students must meet income and needs standards based on the MFI that Steve explained earlier, and they must be at or below 70% of the MFI to qualify. So state need grant service levels, like I mentioned, nearly 69,000 students received state need grant. There's about 93,000 total eligible students for 15-16. So out of those approximately 69,000 that received state need grant, about 14,600 of those were also college-bound recipients, which represented about 16% of the total state need grant eligible population that year. As you can see on the chart, our unserved is decreasing, which is good. We had about 93,000 total eligible students last year, when in 11-12 we had about 105 eligible students. So for state need grant funding and student selections, it is a shared responsibility between institutions and WASAC to get these awards out the door. WASAC, you can see the text in red. Those are items that are unique to state need grant, while the rest apply to all three of the programs that we're talking about today. So the first item under WASAC, we provide each institution with an annual state need grant allocation using a super fancy and complicated fair share distribution model. We base the allocations off of information from the prior year's interim report, and it looks at eligible students at each institution. WASAC informs institutions of the award amounts that are to be awarded, and as Steve mentioned, those will come out usually late spring, which is when the legislative session should end. Provides funds to institutions once we have received the required data from you all. We do provide annual training through a few different means, most commonly the spring workshops and at summer and fall WAFA events, but we also do occasionally put on training events such as the one you are attending right now. And if you need additional training or assistance, you can reach out to us and we can work with your college individually if you have specific training needs. We also do review institutional data submitted on those interim reports, and especially at the end of the year, to assure compliance with all of the rules and regulations of the program. So your job is to select and award state need grant students following all of those state rules and regulations, to request the funds from us and then disperse those funds to the students. You do need to report students and the funds awarded to WASAC through the interim reports. Those are every quarter. You need to report students who are unserved due to a lack of state need grant funding. And you need to report financial aid data on all needy students at the end of the year through the unit record report. So both Steve and Ann work very closely on that unit record report that is due in October of each year. The State Need Grant Archive. This is a tool that Steve mentioned earlier that you do need to check all of your potentially eligible students against before you award them. So it is your responsibility to check for eligibility prior to awarding and again before dispersing funds each term. So you want to use the archive to provide or to see the history through the most current annual reconciliation of students that have received associate's degrees, that have outstanding repayments, or that have reached or are nearing their maximum term usage. So to access the archive, you do log into the portal and you go into the State Need Grant Program and select Archive. This works a little bit different than some of the other tools where it's more of like a Santa's naughty list. So you want to select all of the students that meet the income requirements and the residency. You want to dump them into the archive, and the ones that you get hits on are the ones that have potential eligibility issues. So instead of seeing a list of who is eligible, you'll see a list of who may not be eligible due to the eligibility issues listed right there. So here is an archive example of what it would look like when you put your Social Security numbers in. You can search individual students by name, but I recommend going to that middle tab where it says Search by SSNs. You can paste all of your SSNs in there, and you'll get a report back that will show which students might have potential eligibility issues. You can also click on the little icons down there, for example, that money icon under the in repayment column. You can see how much the student may owe. So if you look at that box where it says receivable information, you can see this person had a receivable that was set up in 1995. You can see the college that they owe the funds to, what their initial debt is, and what their current balance is. I would warn you to be very careful when you are quoting balances to students. I would actually, you do need to forward those calls to the council because the student might have been referred to a collection agency and they might have additional fees above and beyond what the balance in the portal shows. So don't use this tool to quote balances to students, but you can, tell the student you have a repayment from South Seattle from 1995. you need to contact the council to learn how to resolve this. The SNG Dependent Care Allowance, also known as DCA, it's rarely used, but it is still available. Right now we only have 4 institutions, at least for 15-16, that use this option. So it's an additional amount onto the base grant, and that amount is the same regardless of the number of dependents. So just like the award amounts, the DCA is adjusted for the MFI and enrollment, the same way as the other awards. So for example, $906 per year for the 0 to 50%, but that is reduced the higher the MFI goes. A dependent is defined as someone living with the student other than the student's spouse, and care is defined as the assistance provided to the student for which the student pays another person, and someone that is outside of the household. There are a few other state need grant awarding considerations. Concurrent awards by 2 institutions are permitted. However, the financial aid offices do need to communicate to coordinate their awards so that the student does not receive more than 1 full-time award per term. You will see an edit for that on the interim report. So if you report that you are awarding a student full-time and another college is reporting that they also awarded a student 3/4 time, an edit will pop up because between the two, they're almost receiving 2 quarters worth of aid. So please communicate with those other financial aid offices if you're aware of concurrent awards. Under awarding to stretch dollars is not permitted. If you do have an institutional gift equity policy, that is a little bit different. So gift equity policies are permitted, but under awarding is not. Post-withdrawal disbursements are not allowed, and retroactive payments are permitted, but are not required within the same year. So if you had a student who was unserved for fall and winter, and then by spring you had some money freed up, maybe all the students that said they were going to attend didn't show up, you can go back and award those students who were originally unserved and give them funds at the rate that they completed their credits.
I have a question, Carissa.
Okay.
If there is an overaward due to 2 schools dispersing, which school is allowed to keep the money?
Good question. We actually haven't had too many of those. I think it's kind of on a case-by-case basis. I think it depends on a few different factors, such as which term started first or who had awarded the student first, if they had gone back and maybe retroactively awarded a student. So a lot of it has to do with timing, and we can certainly work with colleges if need be, if that situation does arise. So the state need grant does have some self-help requirements and institutional gift equity policies. So this is for CVS eligible scholars. So the self-help requirements that apply for state need grant and institutional gift equity policies do not apply to eligible college-bound scholars. So all eligible college-bound scholars must be awarded maximum state need grant amounts for their MFI ranges and need no matter what. So you can't reduce their state need grant for self-help or because of gift equity policies. They must receive the max. So if you'll note here, this policy applies to all eligible college-bound scholars, even if the student doesn't receive CBS funding that year. So for all other SNG students, so ones that are not college-bound, the self-help requirement is 25% of cost of attendance, unless one of the following reduces that amount. So if your cost of attendance is greater than $13,860 this year, there is a dollar amount that you can use in lieu of the 25%, which is $3,465. Second situation would be that you could waive the self-help requirement if you are an institution that have reduced their cost of attendance for all students by at least 25% below the WASFA Association student budget. Not many colleges fall into that category. Or you may reduce the self-help requirement to 12% if you're using an at-home cost of attendance. So in most cases, this will mean using a living with parent budget. So examples of what counts for self-help. We have EFC, unmet need, the VA benefits and waivers, merit-based aid and waivers, college-bound, loans and scholarships, the state the State Board Opportunity Grant, ETV, and Work Study. So state need grant awards do vary based on the MFI range. So the lower the MFI, the higher the award amount. So here are their percentages. You see students that fall within the 0 to 50% range receive 100% of the maximum award, while students in the highest range, between 65 and 70%, only receive half of the max award. So here is the 16-17 award chart. This is by sector, and it's for 3 quarters or 2 semesters for students enrolled full-time. So if you have a student that enrolls for 4 quarters, their yearly amount will actually exceed the maximum. I'm using the quotes with my fingers right now because it says the max, but this is a 3-quarter or 2 semester maximum. So if they do attend that 4th quarter or that 3rd semester, they will receive more funds. So adjusting the award amounts, there's a few situations where you will reduce award amounts. So if the attendance is less than 9 months, the students only attending 1 quarter would only get 1/3 of the annual award. Students only attending 1 semester would get half. As I was mentioning before, the 4th quarter or 3rd semester awards, the value of the additional term, you would calculate that just as you would any other term. So for a quarter school, you would take the yearly max and divide that by 3 to get your quarterly amount, and you would add that quarterly amount onto the yearly max to determine the new yearly maximum. Fractional last term, so sometimes a student will end up having a fractional term, last term available for their 15 quarters. So they might have used 14.5 quarters. So while they might be enrolled full-time, they only have 0.5 remaining. So in that case, you would reduce the award down to a half-time amount, even if they're enrolled full-time, to keep them within that 15-quarter limit. Gift equity packaging. So you will limit the award if for receipt of state need grant in combination with other gift aid exceeds your gift equity packaging policy. So as I mentioned before, this cannot be applied to awards for college-bound recipients. Each college does have their own gift equity policy. If you do have one, they're unique to each school, so you'll want to know what that policy is when you're awarding your students. You can award a greater portion of the yearly award in 1 term if it's justified by the student's cost, but be sure to document that in the student's file. And the award cannot exceed tuition. So the base grant cannot exceed the actual tuition, service, and activity fees that are charged to the student.
Carissa, we have one question actually that goes back to the award amount. It says, do you give fraction last terms? Or do you have to give fraction last terms?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yes, we do have a tool in Seesaw. Victor will show this in more detail tomorrow, but you can go to the student's record in Seesaw. You can actually see the dollar amount that they are eligible to receive. So we'll show that tomorrow. But the short answer is yes. So as someone asked earlier about the adjustments for enrollment status, the state need grant and DCA term award amounts are adjusted for enrollment status based on the following rate. So full-time is 100%, 3/4 time is 75%, half-time is 50%, and less than half-time is 25%. I'll pass it back over to Steve, and he's going to talk about college-bound scholarship.
Okay, and we're only going to go another 5 minutes today to get you out by 3 o'clock, and tomorrow we'll adjust. We'll be a little bit, Passport to College will be covered tomorrow for sure. But for the CBS program, this is a program that's been around now for about 10 years. It's been established. It's a great program. We have more than 250,000 students who have signed up. They're 7th or 8th graders, so it's got great momentum and great numbers of students who are coming down the pike and they're going to go to your colleges. We had about 14,600 last year, and we mentioned it's median family income. This is a sign-up period. I think you're all aware of that. It's 7th or 8th grade. There's lots of information on our website to tell you more about that. Additional activities occur in high school, where there's encouragement and support from groups like College Success Foundation and local staff and communities. And post-secondary, there's FAFSA, WASFA completion projects, and enrollment, and so forth. So it's just a huge endeavor of folks trying to keep those low-income students motivated, signed up, going to college. Who's eligible? Well, it's really based upon mostly income criteria or status. So there's a chart that's published every year. That's really the free and reduced lunch chart, and if the student's family meets that, they're eligible to sign up, or if they're receiving TANF benefits, or if they're a foster youth. So that's those are really the initial criteria that either as a 7th or 8th grader they could sign up. Mentioned there are about 250,000 who have signed up. You'll see the line here just showing how many per year have signed up, and it's really grown. And so what that means is that a greater share of all the students eligible to sign up each year have signed up. There is this number on the way right that talks about the initial sign-up rate, 89%, and the reconciled sign-up rate, 71%. Take this with a little grain of salt on that, but it meant at one time we thought nearly 89 or 90% of everybody eligible to sign up was signing up. And as measured by 7th and 8th graders, that would be correct. But the reconcile looks a little deeper and looks at transferability and students moving into districts and so forth. And so that one shows there's a little more room for more students to sign up because of different steps along the way. So everybody keep working hard in those middle schools and high schools to sign up students is kind of the message on this. Don't give up, don't despair, we're doing great, but there are more students to sign up. The commitment is that if they do this and they graduate from a Washington high school with a 2.0 or higher GPA, no felonies, they complete the FAFSA, WASFA, and meet the income criteria, and if they enroll in college within a year of high school, that the state will commit to making sure that they provide some form of state scholarship or grant aid to a student to meet the tuition level calculated at a public school rate, some fees, and a small book allowance. So the commitment, if you looked at it kind of visually for a 16, 17 year, this is really what it kind of comes to at the various types of institutions. So research institutions, about 10,500 is the commitment. And again, this is not just college bound, it's state need grant, it's passport to college, it's opportunity scholarship, so a variety of programs could meet this commitment. About 7,000 at the comprehensive 4-year institutions, 4,300 at the community technical colleges and Northwest Indian College and Perry Technical Institute. 11,900 at private 4 years and 4,467 at private 2 years. And we're just about out of time. But the additional CPS information, you must register within a year. We've covered the number of quarters they may use. They can be full or part-time. As Carissa mentioned, though, full-time gets them more money in the long run because they don't have many years to use this program. So the difference here is that there is no specific allocation. Everybody who's eligible is going to get college-bound scholarship. They do, though, have to get a full state need grant. And there's information in the portal, in the cruncher. You're going to select these students according to state rules and regulations. They're just a little different than other programs. You've been a wonderful audience. We'll look forward to working with you all tomorrow. We'll say goodbye because we know you are busy people and have other schedules today, but we hope you all will get back on again tomorrow. Thank you so much.